Hey, what's up, everybody? Good evening. Good evening to you. So you probably can't see my clock behind me. It's 21:42, and it's a little late at night. I did a video earlier today, and I uploaded it, but I took it back down because it was just a 2 or 3. Well, actually, I think it was 4 minutes. It was a 4-minute video. However, I don't want to start putting out a bunch of videos and not always get to the heart of the matter. And sometimes I do that. And ironically, just a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, Mark Gagnon and I were sitting right where I'm at right now. The place looks a little different, as you can tell, but we were sitting right here. And we shot 3 videos in a couple days, and I've learned a lot over the course of the last year in terms of what goes on in YouTube and media presentation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I could be shooting this up in my office. My wife's up there reading. You guys have gotten to know me. I've got my whiteboard over there. You guys have seen it. My Harley's over there. My instruments, drum kit, keyboard, whatever. I can sit here and be doing a little ditty for you. I'm into different stuff. Today I wanted to get with you because I've been watching stuff like the Julian Dory, Ed Calderon thing, Katarina Schultz interacting with Stefano Rittenell, interacting with Julian Dory, interacting with Tommy G on Johnny Mitchell, and the entire incestuous circle of cartel news reporting. And the only guy that actually worked where they're actually talking about is right here, and you know how that goes. I'm left out of a lot of those conversations. I was talking about I would love to have a get-together with myself, Katarina Schultz, Ed Calderon, Gafe 423, Johnny Mitchell, Julian Dory, Tommy G, and get all of us together and just have a great big soiree on all things cartel and cartel news reporting. And they won't do it because each one of those people that I mentioned makes their money off of presenting you guys YouTube clips that generates ad revenue in terms of the amount of time accumulated watching people that advertise their products with you. And I don't do that. My channel is 1000% not monetized. Never has been. In fact, this channel's cost me quite a few grand at this point. I want to take a minute because I was watching Sean Ryan tell Tucker Carlson that everything is a lie. Everything that you think you know is a lie. We live in a world where people like Klaus Schwab will sit there and tell the world through the World Economic Forum and Davos and all the billionaires that go there to have their little private party to come up with how they're going to tell you how you're going to live. And you'll see it in Alexander Karp's 21 or 23 point manifesto. You'll see it in terms of Peter Thiel's Palantir database behind everything, but he won't even live in the countries where he's running the military. He's off in Argentina somewhere and has a bunker in New Zealand. And we're going to get in a little bit of that. And I want to take a moment with you because a lot of people on Julian Dory, it came up like I'm mildly autistic. I don't know. It doesn't hinder my performance in a work sense. I work in aerospace and defense and do this type of stuff. I'm not really going to get into what I'm doing right now. Not that type of thing. I'm also not like some big level rocket scientist tucked away, working in, I don't know, what is it? JBL, any of that stuff, Jet Propulsion Laboratories. I'm not doing anything like that. But I do and have for several years worked in aerospace and defense. sometimes with jobs that have more creative responsibility and other ones that don't, and other ones that are just as mundane as just knocking stuff out of a factory. Pretty simple, not hard work. Well, it is hard work, but it's not something like going out and curing cancer, if you were. It does lead me to think logically and conclusively and require evidence. For example, annealing metals, for example, in metallurgy, or stress relief, and what happens after you remove material from a slug of material and then it distorts. Just different things that you have to do. Nitrite, just a whole bunch of different things I can get into. I took a moment to put together like a little script, because a lot of times my videos aren't scripted, and then I'll get off on some tangent and I really kind of want to stay on point. I wanted to take a moment to apply aerospace failure analysis to a world that seems to be failing. What do I mean by this? I mean, when I go out and do something like getting a second full-time job, working 36 hours at one place and 36 hours at another place, 12 hours each place, 3 days a week, which I've done, you wind up owing a gazillion dollars in taxes, even though you're pulling out all of this money. And it's like, where is all this money going? What are they doing with it? Watching homelessness explode everywhere. A grocery cart full of groceries is $400 when it used to be $1.20. And I don't need, coming up with these scripts. If you use ChatGPT or if you use Opera, whatever, it wants to give you like a great big thing like, oh, well, we can't say this because it's not conclusive. There's no facts. Whatever. People know what they know. You know whether or not the world is a more tranquil place, whether it's more affordable. There are tons of people in the streets, through fentanyl or otherwise, tons of people that aren't even drug addicts that are one check away from losing the roof over their head, etc. And a government that sits there and blows up little girls in Manab with Tomahawk missiles that cost $1 million or $2 million apiece, and can't even be held to answer for that. And so we're going to get into how Dave thinks about everything, cartel, the whole thing, because it's all relative. People ask me why I'm not on the big cartel channels anymore, because I have been on several of them at this point. Glenn Beck, everything about you checks out. That's what he's got to say about me. I've gone out in my own videos, proven time and time again my own background, which is something Ed Calderon will not do. I get a non-disclosure agreement from Eddie Dennis, Ed's partner, and telling me that I will never know Ed's last name. All of the things that I've tried to do to bring you guys the truth that I offer of myself openly. Katarina Schultz, I've tried to contact her through Stefano Rittendell, Jeremy Carey, and Vincent Vargas. In fact, I just called Jeremy Carey and everybody over at Ironclad the other day asking for their side of the story on how they validate their claims or any of the evidence, which means I'm not even being confrontational or combative. I am trying to give them the opportunity to explain their process to you.
This is Ironclad. How may I help you?
Yes, hello. My name is David Frank. I've called before, but this time I'm calling to request the opportunity to interview Katarina Schultz or Jeremy Carey.
Of course, well, I can take a message, sir. Yes, I mean, it's up to them in regards to the interview. They want to move forward with that. If you'd like, I can definitely take down your preferred contact, whether it's email or telephone, but I would have to relay a message.
Yes, please. It's Tordislung, T as in Thomas, ORDISLUNG @gmail.com. And my name is Dave Frank. I've been on several major podcasts at this point regarding cartels in Mexico, but really, I would like to interview them in a project that I'm doing.
Understood. Let me just note that there. And you said it was DIS, D like dog IS,
Yeah,
and then LUNG@gmail.com.
yes, that is correct.
And I have Dave, D-A-V-E, Frank, F-R-A-N-K.
Frank with an E at the end.
E, okay. And you're calling as an individual, correct? Or are you calling with the company?
No, this is my company. In fact, I've been on Glenn Beck and several other things. And I'm doing a story, and I'm now into the second year of this, as to the veracity of cartel reporting in the United States. And bearing in mind, I'm speaking with the expertise of someone that's a former Mexican government official, although I'm a born American. And I would like to know, and I've been building an OSINT database, and I would like to know a little bit more from them about how they vet their story and a little bit more about their process. I've actually spoken previously or received an email previously from Jesse Carey, Jeremy's brother, regarding one story that you guys did, and I re-interviewed the guy, and there were several discrepancies, and I would like to get your guys' side of the story.
And just said, well, yeah, let me go ahead and send your information over, sir. As mentioned, they'll reach out to us as soon as they're available.
Okay, and just so you know, I'm recording this phone call. I'm going to use this as data also, so please do have them get back to me.
I will let them know, sir. I'm just the receptionist, so anything further, they'll have to make that decision on their end.
Totally understood. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you as well.
In manufacturing, we have work instructions, statistical process control, and outline process in order to deliver a predictable result. Oftentimes within a certain time frame, with quality built into whatever product that it is we're creating. And it can either be intellectual property, it can be something physical or tangible, it can be whatever you want. It can also be applied to videos, and it is. They have this, Jeremy Carey. I've had other videos where Jeremy Carey does explain this.
Basically, we built a content ratio. So if we have a green light process, so when our team is bringing stuff to us.
Even Rick Beato, for example, one of my favorite channels, has a great music channel. I am certain that when he goes to produce a video, he has an outlined process that he starts, a roadmap, if you will, kind of like what I've got in front of me, to make sure you stay on course, and at the end of the journey, you get to where you want to go. It's very simple. Statistical process control in Six Sigma and Kaizen, all three of those, are all very much, that's not satanic either, it's Kali, it's one of my buddy's stickers, are all very much roadmaps to get to where you want to go. So because I've used this for so long, when I see something, hear something, I start thinking in these type of terms, and I don't ever like to tell anybody else what to think. I like to ask questions and then see what you think about it given your experience, right? Which is kind of a good way to go about things. You get to the best conclusions because there might be something that had not occurred to me, had not occurred to other people, had not occurred to a mass of people. As with the COVID thing, you saw how that whole thing, people in large numbers that are scared are a dangerous thing, and we should avoid that by evidence, which is why I started making my videos and not monetizing them. So I can say things like Israel, and I don't know, it seems like ever since I started speaking about that, my viewership has just cratered, but I don't care, because even if I reach a couple people that are out there, there will be a ripple effect, okay? So, people ask me why I'm not on the big cartel channels anymore. Maybe it's because I don't start with conclusions. I do not have a conclusion. I start with failure analysis. And failure analysis is something that we use in aerospace and defense in order to determine or predict what could go wrong, or also working from a critical incident and go backwards. So when you spent years in aerospace, you learned that assumptions kill people. You can't pull over at 30,000 feet and then be like, hey, you know what? There's a problem with the oil pressure sensor. We need to fix this, and then we can continue our flight to Helsinki or whatever. That's not how it works. If you screw something up, for example, I've created or helped create a ton of landing gear. And so every time landing gear fails to deploy on an aircraft, a lot of times I think, man, I hope that's not something I did incorrectly, because when you're doing your job, you're completely cognizant of the fact that a failure on your part is going to have serious ramifications down the line, and you are going to get a lot of people potentially harmed or killed if you do not do your job correctly, right? So you're always thinking in this type of terms. So today I want to show you how engineers analyze failures and why I think everyone should start thinking this way. This is what this thing's got to do with everything. I have a thing here. Let me see. I left my mouse upstairs. Oh, you know what? I'll just go right here. I'll just use this. So step one, define the system. I'm going to explain this to you so you can figure this whole thing out. First, you have to define what it is you're looking at, the system. So before you can understand failure, you have to define what is the system, who are the players involved, what are they trying to accomplish, okay, because that's a big one. What's the goal? And what are the constraints? An example, an airline is just wings, right? It's a lot more than that. There's a fuselage, landing gear, instrumentation, sensors. There are several different components. Fuel access panel. There are so many different things that you can think about on an aircraft that's weighing several 100,000 pounds. It's not just a set of wings. And in fact, actually, well, some of them are technically just wings, but that's very few. There's engines, hydraulics, softwares, manufacturing, maintenance, weather, pilots, air traffic control, right? This is all things that are going to affect this aircraft. Politics are the same. And you know, I was thinking about Sean Ryan, who has one of the largest, if not the largest, podcast in the world, Navy SEAL, CIA contractor, talking with Tucker Carlson, whose father worked for the CIA, also hugely famous and influential in his community.
I never want to involve myself in the U.S. political system or vouch for any man again.
Thank you very much. And to my fellow citizens, America is back.
And then there was this period where you, I don't know, got involved, but you got closer to the political process. And now you're saying you don't want anything to do with that.
No, I just don't.
Why?
Everything is a lie.
But also completely predictable, and you can see how this can be true. Because people will put a lot of stuff out there in the internet. People will see it, will never verify it, and if it's, I just said this the other day, news has nothing to do with the truth. It has everything to do with the perception or the illusion of legitimacy, right? We talked about that. And what people want to believe and what their morals are and their own fear. There's only two different types of fear in the world. Fear of not getting what you want or fear of losing what you have. And based on that, people generate anger. I've read books on this. My grandmother gave me books about this when I was younger because I used to have a lot of anger when I was a young man, and I had to work through a lot of that. And you find out that anger is always, a derivative of fear. And fear only comes in two forms: fear of losing what you have or fear of not getting what you want. And that's basically how the entire world functions as far as that goes. So when you see someone cheering ICE in the street or whatever, it could be anything, or someone pepper spraying and someone that's cheering ICE in the street, because it's both of those parties are sitting there and they're fearful. The guy's fearful of losing his home, his job, whatever, his country. The other person's fearful of being blah, 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 losing all the same things potentially. Losing their job, their home, and the country. Both of them fearful of losing the same exact thing, right? Getting back to this. So politics is the same. the government isn't one system. Media isn't one system. The economy isn't one system. There are thousands of interconnected systems, right? Not unlike what I am doing right now to influence people to challenge, or at least at a minimum, require evidence of what they're being told. Valhalla VFT, who I've met in person not far from here. Yo, dude, stop fucking talking to me, dude.
Bro, I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, hey. If I want your fucking opinion, I'll ask you.
Alright, don't come crying to me. You won't get much
Hey,
going.
yo, shut the fuck up, man.
Okay. No hostility towards me, man.
So that's Valhalla VFT. I'll be damned.
What's up?
What's up, dude?
Good to meet you, brother.
Good to meet you too.
Yeah, we're just live, just documenting down here.
I know. I just ran up behind the guys, and I had some guy telling me not to get too close or I'd get smashed. But
I don't know. You look about as big as me. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure I want to smash.
Man, so I was very buddy. Hey, we're the same side. Chumming it up, Oregon buddy type thing. Both like a lot of the same stuff. Both believe probably in being responsible, whatever. He goes to make a claim on one of his live feeds one night, and I'm on there. And I ask him, what evidence do you have? Because he made the claim that Americans were in Mexico and killed El Mencho, and that Americans in Mexico were being taken hostage. And I challenged it. I asked him, what evidence do you have of any of that? And he got very upset with me. Called me a retardo or whatever, and something else. I did a video on it. But things that weren't warranted. I simply asked for evidence to back up his claims of whatever it was he was stating. Then he stated, well, the Department of Defense said it. That's great. I don't care who said it, but what evidence is there that Americans killed Mencho and that even Mencho's dead? And the evidence that Mencho's dead is that the Fiscalía General de la República of Mexico stated that they gave out an autopsy, and there's a Mexican reporter reporting on it in Jalisco or in El Defe. I did a video on that too, but traced it all the way back to the source, not unlike what we do here.
Por la muerte de Nemesio Ceguera Cervantes, mejor conocido como El Mencho, la Fiscalía General de la República señaló esta mañana en un comunicado que el cuerpo del líder del cártel Jalisco Nueva Generación ya fue reclamado. Lo hizo.
It's a very simple thing to do. You just stay on it and you'll do something like called, and I've spoken about this too, in our root cause and corrective action analysis, right? To where you'll have an Ishikawa diagram or a fishbone diagram, if you will. It's got 6 different branches on it. And you'll challenge things like material, manpower, methodology, acts of God, etc. And you'll keep going down and you'll ask why. And you'll ask why like 5 different times on each one of those things to make sure you're getting to the root cause. So when we're looking at all these systems like this, and the media, politics, and the economy are all multiples of systems together, it's something that you have to start looking at in a much more detailed format in order to make sure that you're not being lied to and you're being told the truth. And not only that, but most importantly, that you are the most effective vessel in the best position to bring your family to the success that you want them to have and the success that you want to realize in your own life, which is what I care about. Successful people are happy people. Successful people are not out killing children, are not out looking for ways to take over the world. They're content. And a lot of the people that are power hungry, that are sociopathic, are not content people. And the only way to do battle with that isn't to go pick up a weapon or whatever and go confront them in the streets. Hey, that is something that does happen, but there's a better way to do it. And the better way to do it is by waking people up and helping them have an educated opinion on what's going on. And educated in terms of they learn how to consider all the relevant facts and put it together. Not that I have all the answers. None of us do. However, there are systems to help all of us with that, which is what I'm sharing with you right now. And even in sharing it with you, I'm reinforcing it with myself, because if you really want to get to know something, teach it, right? So going down to step 2, identify critical components. In aerospace, we ask, what parts can fail? Not what part do I want to blame. We ask everything. What can fail? What can go wrong? In society, what are the critical components? Let's list a few. Trust, law, food, and trust right there, right off the top. Trust. If you have ulterior motives, it's difficult to trust you. When you have the president's children buying bunkers on Albanian islands, and it's ironic, I've got an Albanian flag right behind me.
On an incredible project with my husband in the Mediterranean. It's massive in scale.
I think that's an understatement. Can you explain?
Yes, it is.
There's no power on this island. You're building everything from scratch, correct?
Well, it's an unbelievable, beautiful 1,400 hectare private island in the middle of the Mediterranean.
With a bunker on it, it's hard to trust you. There's so many different ulterior motives. So trust, it's a big one. And just to reiterate, what are the critical components of society? Trust, law, food. We all have to have something to eat. Law, in as much as, hey, I'm not going to harm you or your property, and don't harm me or mine. Not, hey, it's illegal to go surfing because of COVID or whatever. Because there's people that just completely run over that. Good law, we should put that, but sometimes not all law is good. We've seen that. Energy, transportation, communication, money, family, freedom. Safety wasn't in there. Safety wasn't in there because you can't really ever guarantee safety. Why? Because there's a different set of laws that we often forget about that we all live by, which are the natural laws. Law of nature. Those are laws that are immutable, that do not change, okay? They're never going to change for us. Actually, I need to re-speak. The laws of nature or the laws of physics could be mutable. They can't. Mostly they're immutable, and if you step in front of a moving object, radiant heat, different things that can affect you, there's going to be consequences, right? Which are not going to be tempered with mercy in a court of law by a judge. The consequences are going to be immediate, and that's it. So once enough critical systems weaken, everything starts becoming unstable, which is where we're at right now. Which is why billionaires with all the money and the wealth in the world, literally, are out building bunkers and having the employees sign non-disclosure agreements right and left. I've spoken about it before. One of the things that I do is I build drones on my own time, programming them. Ben, shout out to you. I've spoken about who is responsible when you have a group of sentient, autonomous drones that are surveilling you and deciding who dies, and then these autonomous systems decide to go out and whack all of us. Who is responsible for that when all the humans have been removed from the command chain? It's a legitimate question that should be asked to the leadership involved, and they like to pawn a lot of this off on an artificial intelligence race with China, and therefore we need all of this. You know, simple things. We need to be nice to each other. We need to all work and generate an income, and there's a lot of people that aren't, either from people that are just born with so much excess that they're no heavenly good, and other people that are so lazy that they've made a lifestyle out of sitting at home. Neither are good. The socialist, and about that, every single government program that you can think of is a socialist program because it's taking your money and applying it to something that doesn't benefit you directly. That you never had a say-so in, so we can get into the 10th Amendment Center. Stick with this. Everything is becoming unsafe. Failure doesn't happen overnight, okay? One lesson aerospace teaches, catastrophic failure usually starts years before the crash. In aerospace, we have a thing called traceability. It means that when we generate a component, manufacture it, and it goes through standardized work instructions, there's quality, in-process quality inspections to make sure everything's taking place when it's going on, making sure you're not using ingredients that are caducido or expired. Excuse me, sticking some Spanish in there. That everything has gone the way they're supposed to in order to generate a predictable result, which is what we were talking about earlier. It could be argued that a lot of the things that we're going through right now, suffering today, a $400 cart of groceries, is a predictable result. Depends on what your output, your desired output is. Sticking with this, tiny cracks, ignored warnings, deferred maintenance. You know, they have a thing called preventative maintenance, to where an ounce of maintenance is, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So you will sit there and pull things offline in order to do preventative maintenance to make sure that there's not some catastrophic failure later. One of the best jobs I had gotten when I'd gotten back from Russia, I got a job doing a lot of stuff for the military, and the military can come in and shut down your factory if you get behind on military contracts, to make sure that you are not damaging national security by failing to provide weapons or components or whatever. They'll come in and they'll shut down. And if you are not doing preventative maintenance on your machines and other things, this can actually really become a thing to where you didn't deliver on a contract you were required to deliver it on. Or, for example, a line stoppage at some of the major aircraft manufacturers can result in a fine of up to $1 million per day per stoppage, right? Heavy consequences for not doing what you were contractually obligated to do. So we go through failure analysis to figure out what can go wrong and what we can do to mitigate the circumstances or the items that are involved in order to make sure that we get where we want to go. Normalization of risk. Oh, it's okay. It's not that big of a deal. Not okay. Every disaster report says the same thing. There were warning signs, and that the same question applies to society. Are there warning signs? The economy, energy. They're talking about the Strait of Hormuz not being a big deal. That is 1/5 of the oil that flows through the world. It's going to become a big deal if other people decide that they don't want to pay more in oil and they're going to source it from another place. And then the price for everybody goes up. So even something on the other side of the world levies consequences against you and your family, and the quantity of money that is subtracted from your paycheck after taxes at the end of the week in order to provide fuel for you and your family, both in your vehicle and at home, to heat the water and otherwise. And even the fuel that's required to generate power for the societies and cities that we live in. There are heavy consequences that are laden with problems, to where people will be like, yeah, Iran has killed a lot of people. First of all, I want to see the evidence of that. Second of all, let's look at the consequences of why that whole thing. Just logical, because as soon as you say one thing, you can go down a rabbit hole on that all by itself. Sticking to the point, there are a lot of consequences. There are a lot of consequences for all of us together, individually and collectively. There were warning signs. There are warning signs right now. The same question applies to society. Are there warning signs? So, examples. Increasing political hatred. Problematic. There have been TED Talk videos on it by people that were tasked, people from the CIA, I might add, that were tasked, or from NGOs that do work for the CIA, that were tasked for predicting civil wars and whatnot. I encourage you to go look at it. And you can see a lot of it online too, but really, we all intuitively know it when we see what's going on our news in the cities and states that we live in right now, right? Not rocket science. Loss of trust, massive debt, foreign conflicts, AI replacing labor. H-1B visas coming in. You know, a lot of people that have an education think that, oh, we can't be touched. And then all of a sudden, surprise, you get an H-1B visa. That guy comes in and takes your job. And then he gets to become a citizen, and then another person comes in and takes his job because the next person looking for an H-1B visa will work for even less than the original person that came over on an H-1B visa. And all the while, the billionaires are laughing to the bank because instead of paying $120,000 or $160,000 a year, now they're paying $80,000 a year, and now they're paying $40,000. And they're laughing all the way to the bank. In fact, that's exactly how I wound up in Mexico. Didn't want to go. Really cost me my job when I told them to pound sand. I'm not going to do it, and just shot myself in the foot as far as moving up in that company. It was good. It was a good job. I had a future there until I told them, no, I'm not going to sell out my workers. So, data centers becoming strategic infrastructure. There's a thing that I would like to do on that about a lot of private companies building data centers before they get their initial public offering or IPO, and then they really skyrocket in value. There's a lot to go on that. In fact, there's a lot of people weighing in on that. In the entire artificial intelligence thing as a whole, I'm not educated enough to speak on that at depth. Other people are, and I encourage you to look into it. However, the data center things are billionaires trying to get more wealth. And at some point with capitalism, you have to think of how much is too much. If one person could conceivably garner unto themselves all of the material resources in the world and leave the rest of the world with nothing, would you be okay with that? If they did it through an economic system such as capitalism, would you be okay with that? While you and your family starved, and then one person took all of the resources in the world and had them behind a wall, and you couldn't have any of it. For example, real examples, Nestle Corporation trying to buy all of the fresh water. This is something that's already happened. And so we need to really start looking at the amount of wealth accumulation. I'm the last person that's a fan of socialism. Believe me, I'm not. I wake up, I only sleep a few hours every day. I get up and work all the time. I work and work and work and work overtime and study. I've already studied today. Now I'm doing a video, and then I'm going to go up and spend some time with my wife. I am not a socialist. Far from it. I'm just asking, at what point have you won the game when you get 999,999 points on Defender game, and then the score starts to flip and you continue going through it, or Pac-Man, or anything that has a resettable score? How many times do you have to level up through the score in order to be like, hey, you know what, this game, I've already beaten it so much that it really doesn't make any sense to continue playing it at that point. That's kind of where billionaires are at, dude. So, data centers becoming strategic infrastructure, growing dependence on centralized technology. This is a weakness that we should be talking about, because people like Alex Karp, people like Peter Thiel, people like Elon Musk and Bill Gates should not have the ability to kill you with fleets of autonomous drones, should not have the ability to track you over every square inch or square centimeter of the planet through satellites that are tracking all of our electronic devices, should not have the ability, the grape word with the R. If a person goes and introduces a liquid into another person's body through the grape word, obviously everybody in the world become unglued, because it is inherently wrong on a level that's difficult to comprehend how someone can even do that. However, they're willing to have the government be able to do that to you with a liquid that you never wanted to take inside of your body. And if not, you and your family can starve to death because you can't work because you're not essential people. All human beings are essential. You are essential. I am essential to my wife. You better believe me, man. I treat her so good. Hey, Babita! No, she can't, whatever. My wife loves me, man. I'd go out of my way to make sure I take such good care of her because she takes such good care of me. And I know that you got people like that too. We are all essential. You are essential. If no one else tells you today that you're essential, I want you to know. I know, I don't think, I know, because there's a sea of difference between think and know. I know that you are essential. You matter. You matter enough for me to be doing this stupid video. Growing dependence on centralized technology. Bad. Not good. Whether you think these are connected or not, failure analysis says don't ignore changes, document them, which is what we do. I put one day I was shooting a video at the house. I forgot to clean my nose really good, and I saw there's a little fleck of mucus there. I just thought to myself, I'm like, you moron, you just got done uploading a video you got a piece of. You get the idea. So you learn that you got to really make sure that you're put together before you start shooting, because otherwise someone's going to see you and you're not at your best. Which is okay, we're all human. However, it's that type of thing that's going on. You know, I document all the changes and keep all my videos out there so I can see the continuum from when I first started publishing and people like Travis Haley refusing to answer whether or not he was doing tactical magazine exchanges with Ed. Something that's happened. Sorry about that. I had to pause it. Bottom line being is I sit there and I keep my videos, even the old ones that I don't like very much, so I can see the transition from when I first started and where we're at now, and then have them there to document it, because other people like Katarina Schultz will sit there and blank out everything prior to 2025 on her Twitter or her Substack or whatever in order to put forth a certain manufactured, fabricated appearance. It's scrubbed. And you'll see it with politicians all the time too. They'll scrub things. When you have to scrub things about yourself, you're not trustworthy. You're disingenuous. You're not genuine. You're not authentic. You're none of that stuff. I don't want to become that person. In order not to become that person, I have to hold myself to a standard and a level of discipline to where I have things that are out there that are not exactly as I would like them to be, but it's the truth, it's documented, and it's what is, because this is how I approach everything in my life. Okay. Why I challenge cartel stories. This surprises people. They assume challenging a story means defending the opposite side. I get that a lot of times. A lot of times people will think that I'm a cartel cheerleader, when I'm actually, out of the bulk of them, maybe even including Ed Calderon and Gafe 423, it really remains to be seen. I would like to see the level and extent of their service with some evidence, have been shot at and hit in the plate carrier, or in the plate, with a round from the opposing side. I'm not a cartel cheerleader, believe me. I hate the fact, detest the fact that they give children drugs, that they kill innocent people. There's a level of evil and malevolence to them that is difficult to describe if you haven't seen it in person, including women being beheaded and butchered like barbecue chicken. When you go get a rotisserie chicken in Mexico, they sell them all the time. They have a set of pruning shears sitting there and they chop them up with those. And that's kind of like what I've seen done to human bodies. And there's no way to ever really vocally articulate that or relay that to you in a manner that would really levy sufficient gravity to let you know what it's like if you haven't seen it in person. It's life-changing. It will change the way that you see things forever after that. I'm not a cheerleader of the cartel. That's not engineering. I'm not assuming challenging a story means that do not assume challenging a story means I'm defending the other side. I want failure analysis and what it says to challenge your own assumptions first. For example, my assumptions with the Bible. I challenge those, and we should all challenge our own assumptions in order to make sure that our bedrock, our foundation is solid, that the claims and what we believe are secure, and in that way, and not by cherry picking data either, or thrusting or doing away with outliers and statistics, by doing a quantitative analysis of everything that's out there. Complete lack of Mexican sources. Stefano Rittendell was talking about Julian Dory, that he stated that they're gleaning a lot of information from Spanish-speaking Twitter sites. Not firsthand relevant information, but it is out there. And then when you look in the American ecosystem of cartel content, you'll notice a complete lack of staffed, degreed, bilingual Mexican journalists that live in Mexico and report on this on a daily level, on a daily basis for a living. Non-existent. You get Luis Chaparro, you get the Rivera guy that was on Julian Dory, you get Julian Dory, Tommy G, Katerina Schultz, Vincent Vargas, the rest of the people on Ironclad, Sean Ryan, Ed Calderon. I think I said Luis Chaparro already. I probably did. Ana Gonzalez or whatever. You get all these people, and none of them are degreed, bilingual, Mexican citizen, journalist for a Mexican news agency that does this on a daily basis. There's not one of them in there. And we're talking about cartel dynamics that sway American voters to support policies that we shouldn't be supporting if the information that we're getting is inaccurate. That's basically a condensed version of why I do this. Making sure that Nina Hernandez's daughter Maria isn't blown up by a Predator drone strike because some YouTubers got together, Tommy G, the rest of them, and decided they wanted to make a whole bunch of money so they could buy income rentals, properties, and sell you all this BS and malarkey on YouTube. That's why I do this, right? So, failure analysis says challenge your own assumptions first. When I ask, where did this information come from? I'm not killing the story. I'm trying to prevent bad analysis. That's exactly what aerospace engineers do. Ask, can it be verified? Ask, who collected it? Ask, is there independent confirmation of any of this? Same thing I did with Valhalla BFT. What evidence do you have that Americans were in Mexico killing El Mencho and that Americans in Mexico are being kidnapped as a result of this? And months later we find out, for example, there was a claim by Israel that stated that there were a bunch of beheaded babies. Years later, guess what? Never happened. Never happened. No evidence. And when that was coming out, I was asking for evidence. Not because I didn't believe that it happened. I don't know. I'm from a neutral standpoint. I'm looking for evidence so we can substantiate, document, and hopefully prevent from happening in the future real cases of things that do happen. So, can it be verified? Who collected it? Is there independent confirmation? Could there be another explanation? Those aren't political questions, they're engineering questions. They're journalistic questions. They're questions that can be applied to every single facet of life if you think about it. So the root cause analysis. This is where engineering gets interesting. Never confuse symptoms with root causes. Example, a turbine explodes, right? We all know what they are. They're the great big whirly part that gets on the jet engine, the inlet, the intake, that's going to take a whole bunch of air and shove it through a venturi and thermal expansion and going to propel the jet forward. You see them every time and they're fascinating to look at. You know, in fact, I've even made some for, I'm going to leave the manufacturer out of it. But there's a lot of intricacies with that. For example, your tool life management and whatnot. And if you take a tool that, even though it's capable of generating a chip or swarf when you're removing metal from a larger workpiece, that certain elements or components of that carbide, if it's insufficiently sharp, your cutting tool, could embed itself in the base material and you wouldn't even know it. So you have to go to mag and penetrate test to inspect whether or not there are inclusions underneath the surface where there's been a foreign material embedded, to where when this turbine's spinning at several 100,000 RPMs per minute, that there's not some critical there's not a fracture in there that could lead to a critical incident that would potentially kill many, many people. This just the level of detail that you have to have. And so in order to avoid that, there's a best practice to where you're swapping something out at a given interval in order to make sure that this doesn't happen. You're thinking about things ahead of time, right? When you're looking at cartel stories, right? Because there's a lot of people that think, oh, you know, this Davey tries to come off smarter than he is. First of all, I am so far down on the totem pole of smart. Stephen Hawking and other people out there that I do not view myself that way at all. And also, I am only what my God made me, and I have to do the best I can with the hand that I was given, which is the same for all of us. I'm speaking to what I know, what I do professionally at work and otherwise, and that's it. No more, no less. This is Dave. Exactly how I look, and that's it, guys. But this I do know. This is what I do for a paycheck. So when I'm going after all these cartel stories, you know, the turbine exploding, what was the cause? The explosion? No, the explosion was not the cause. That was the result. The cause may have been poor metallurgy. We were speaking about metallurgy earlier in this video. Vibration, maintenance, heat cycling, design, margin, or failure. And the same can be said with society. People argue over today's headline. You know, we were just talking about the headless babies that happened. You know, it's a terrible thing that happened to the Israelis. And here's something. The Israeli government even killed its own Israeli citizens. That's something that's come out in the wash since then. The Israeli government knew about this happening before. Hezbollah also has, in certain manners, a legitimate gripe against the way Palestinians are treated. There are so many different things that go on over there that they'll stick a snippet into the news and then get people thinking a certain way and leading this group of people around with a dangling carrot, getting them to support policies that are harmful ultimately to all of us. And this is one of the biggest things that I learned in Mexico. I cannot dehumanize another human being without dehumanizing myself in the process. A lot of people never have the ability to grasp that, but believe me, it is true. One of the things that I am certain of is that if I dehumanize you, I am dehumanizing myself in the process. Someone said that I am only as free as other people as I allow other people to be as a bar, because that's something I said on the Julian Dory podcast. It's absolutely true. If you do not allow other people freedom to be themselves, you are no longer free to be yourself the moment that you decide that you may agree with that person and want to be like them. Period. Period. It's just, it's a foregone conclusion, guys. I know we all want a house. I know we all want the car, the marriage maybe, the physical niceties, a little bit more comfort, etc. But also we have to live and function within a society as a whole to where other people feel safe and comfortable around us. And I mean safe within, it's hard to quantify that because what safety is to one person and what freedom is to another is really difficult to define, especially when you have a country that has 350 million people in it. However, there is a modicum of reasonableness to where you can think, you know what, hey, you're safe in your home and you have food tonight and your family's not going to be attacked while you're at home. Pretty normal stuff. There are people that don't know that any longer, and when there's people that don't know if they can even go to their own home and get a good night's worth of sleep before they have to wake up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work by 5, that's going to create stress and problems for everybody in society. And then people are going to clamp down on it with brown shirt type troops running amok in the street that have no legal accountability whatsoever and even a minimum of training. And they make everybody behind a badge look bad. This creates stress and hatred and uncertainty. In Spanish, it would be called incertidumbre. I love that word. For everybody, man. Not good for anybody. Not good for Asian people. Not good for black people. Not good for Latino people. Not good for white people, old people, young people, gay people, straight people, boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. All of us, we all are going to suffer as a result, except for the billionaires who are going to run off to their bunkers and try to wait it out. Stuff. So when we ask about the stuff that with society as far as root causes, people argue over today's headlines. Engineers might ask, what happened 5 years earlier? Why are we in Iran? A lot of people don't even realize that the United States and Israel had everything to do with overthrowing or ousting the prime minister of Iran going way back to the 1950s, which has generated problems to this day because the law of return, you reap what you sow, karma, comes back to everyone. And when you have people that are putting these policies in place, and a lot of it does have to do with Zionism. I'm going to let you guys form your own conclusion on that, To say that that's not involved would be a mistake. To say that it's not involved in terms of manipulating the oil market would be abhorrently wrong. However, it is what it is. There's a reason why Iran doesn't really like the United States and Israel. A very good reason. If you're involving yourself in the politics of a foreign country, as many in the United States are fond of saying Russia and China doing here in the United States. However, this is what's been done by this country and by the smaller hat country to Iran. And then these years later, these Iranians, they're so bad. You got to look at the whole thing, man. Read the whole book, not just the last 3 chapters, okay? You got to read the thing start to finish and then have a comprehensive conclusion on what actually happened. Root cause and corrective action analysis is what we're calling this. So, what happened 10 years earlier, 20 years earlier? This happened back in the 1950s, okay? Almost 100 years ago. Still a thing, bringing bad fruit. Examples to discuss as far as what we can apply this to is immigration, inflation, the guest workers in the 1950s. And when we're calling immigration, let's bear in mind that a lot of what is today the United States previously was Mexico or Spain or otherwise. There are groups of people that live here, and even Mongolians that came here that are now Native Americans. Good or bad, right or wrong, we're all here now. Whatever that looks like. And if there's a huge welfare system being taken advantage of by people, and I agree that there is, we can't even really blame that on the immigrants because that's something that American politicians have brought to place, and I don't think that welfare system should exist. The law of nature dictates that we all have to get up and be self-sufficient and self-sustaining, and if we're not, we're cast off, and so long. I agree with this approach. Mostly. I do not agree with leaving the elderly and infants, babies, left to their own devices. However, that's not what's going on these days, and we all know it. And it's not just immigrants that do it. There are generations of people that learn from their parents and learn from their grandparents, going on down. How does it survive or subsist, get their sustenance from government income? Probably not a super comfortable existence. However, they're getting all their SNAP benefits and everything. I do not agree with this, and it's an egregious failure of American politicians and experts inside quotation marks, forking over your hard-earned dough that should be going to support you and your family and your wants while you're still here on this earth with your time. But it's not. It's going to someone else that's sitting there bullshitting in a parking lot all day long because they don't have a job to be at. And it's terrible. And immigrants aren't the people that are responsible for that. Immigrants of any color. Inflation. A lot to be said about that. Crime. Crime I take particular issue with because we're all kind of responsible for making sure that we don't become a victim. There's not a police officer in the entire world, and anyone that wants to argue this with me, I will definitely argue with it, that is capable of protecting you when something's going down. In fact, when they're right there, as is the case of Uvalde, they were standing right there. The only one that can be responsible for your safety in any given moment is you. There is nobody else. No officer of the law, no federal agent, no soldier is going to come over and protect you when someone is in your space challenging your safety and your life. That is up to you and your property. That is up to you and you alone. And the thought that other people can do that for you has really brought us to being to a bad way, because then people start getting used to the idea that they're not responsible for themselves, and then we find ourselves in the situation that we're in today, and that's not doing any of us any favors. Wars, political polarization, government distrust, technology. Don't ask who do I hate, ask what chain of events produced this predicament or this problem that we're experiencing now. And it may be several different things. On an Ishikawa diagram, as we were talking about, there's going to be 6 different arms of that, and you're going to fill them out. And even on each one of those arms, the material, there may be several materials that cause that. There may be several manufacturing defects that cause that, or methodology. There may be several different manpower issues that cause that. Acts of God, whatever. There may be several different instances, and then you have to chase each one of those down and get to the why. Looking at today's world through failure analysis, instead of treating every issue separately, treat them as interacting systems, because they are. Topics to walk through that I'm going to talk with you today: foreign policy, military alliances. You just had all of the Democrats that have historically been trying to take away gun rights, which is ironic too, because basically the Black Panthers in the late 60s, the last major gun legislation that was passed was in the late 60s, was directed against black people owning firearms. So all the Democrats out there trying to challenge arms today, that's crazy, because the Republicans didn't want Black Panthers having guns in the 60s, late 60s, and you wind up with a lot of the changes to the gun laws that previously weren't there, that now are just commonplace. But now you're having Republicans that have always championed the Second Amendment sit there, fork over national sovereignty to Israel in terms of giving them all the access to our military and drawing us into every human rights violation, every war that Israel might ever want, and completely negating the voice of the American constituent, right? Of any color, any religion, doesn't matter. Israel and Gaza. Tens of thousands of babies being murdered. Men, women, and children dying in their sleep in their hospitals. And you can look at the Sean Ryan, Tucker Carlson thing. They show a picture of a flyover of Gaza before and after. And it is unspeakable, the evil that has gone on there. And then you think that doing that and raising that entire area so you can build the Ben Gurion Canal or whatever it is going to bring about positive fruits in the future. We're having problems with Iran today because of something that happened back in the 1950s. Those men and children and women that survive that are going to grow up and are going to be justified in their wrath towards you. They are not terrorists. You went there and killed them. You went to Manab and murdered a school full of little girls and boys and their teachers that weren't doing anything. And then not only did you do that, you stacked another Tomahawk missile right on top of it. And then to add insult to injury, when the Iranian government forks over the serial numbers to the components that are in those Tomahawk missiles, with all the traceability that we have in aerospace and defense, you can't even have the integrity to be like, hey, I messed up, I made a mistake. We thought that the school was attached to a military base. Yes, those were our missiles. We were grievously wrong for those children. And own it like a man or like a woman, conceivably, depending on who made the call. They can't even do that. And this has been months later. And they have the traceability and capability to do so. Sorry about that. I just got a message from school. The capability and traceability to do so, and refuse to, even though they've been given several different serial numbers from the components that either were or were not in those missiles, or maybe some were and some weren't, whatever the case, whatever the evidence bears. Civilian casualties, economic instability, growing government debt. You know, these people want all of our money, and they are several trillions of dollars in debt. However, thank God we've got a trillionaire, Elon Musk, who is enriching himself off of government contracts, I might ask, while we're going further in the hole. And not just us, our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. Data centers, artificial intelligence, mass surveillance, political polarization, mass surveillance, let's touch on that. Ted Kaczynski, a Harvard-educated, Berkeley instructor, mathematics, pretty smart, wrote a manifesto. I disagree and abhor the initiation of violence against anybody. Bad. Bad, bad, bad. That being said, how many of you have ever read what he has to say about the Industrial Revolution and the subsequent technological revolution and the extinction of privacy and what that will do to freedom? Kind of an important thing. Maybe you should see what he has to say about it. Don't agree, whatever. But you should at a minimum know what he had to say and why he felt compelled to do that. Yes, the guy is a crackpot, without a doubt. You should never, ever, ever visit harm upon people that are not actively and immediately trying to harm you, ever. That does not mean that the intrusion of Palantir databases in all of our lives, which is exactly what he was warning against, is something that's good or something that's going to bring about or bode well more freedom or bode well for freedom for any of us. And that's not a society that I want to live in. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. Second Amendment debates, political polarization, emergency powers after COVID. You know, you had people being arrested for surfing in their natural environment. That is akin to arresting a fish for swimming in the ocean. A human and all of his subsequent behavior are components of the natural universe. We are a naturally occurring biological species here present in our natural environment, and people should think about immigration and everything else in these terms too, because that's the way it is. The government does not own the land. You do not own the land. We are all components and elements to an interlinked, functioning biosphere that's this earth and even this universe and even a multiverse that Hawkins has spoken about. We're not lines drawn on a map and some people can eat and some other people can't eat until the people that can't eat decide that it's morally convenient for them to allow the other person to go get a job to be able to feed himself and his family instead of starving to death while you decide to make up your mind about whether or not that person who never consented to being governed by you in his own natural habitat has the ability to feed himself any more than you would tell a squirrel in a park it can't go get an acorn and stash away in its hole so he can have something to eat on a cold winter day. The sheer arrogance of that is just mind-blowing, man. Self-importance, just what God complex. Racism has got nothing to do with it. There's people that treat other people nastily of every color that they shouldn't. And there are things that all of us have to overcome. Incubus, succubus, demons, Christian things, greed, gluttony, sloth, envy, the whole thing, man. There are things that all of us as humans wrestle against. But just the complete lack of recognition for the humanity of any of us is something that's just absurd. Absurd. And I don't think that any of us should ever be in a position to where we have to sit there and wait on a shelf until another human decides whether or not we, using our own physical ability and bodies, can go out and get a job to be able to feed ourselves, honestly, through the fruits of our own labor in any given society. I think it's just the reason why I cannot dehumanize you without dehumanizing myself. Remember, we were talking about the same thing applies. Media incentives, and then you have to ask, could these all be related? Maybe. Could it all be connected? Maybe. Connected? Maybe. Failure analysis says don't force an answer. I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it to you to figure out whether or not through your own investigations that you conduct what your own truth is and the answer that you arrive at. Which is why I never tell people what to think. keep mapping the relationships until the picture becomes clearer, right? That's what we're doing right now. I'm not being long-winded. I'm explaining a process to where we can all get where we want to go, which is a better understanding of the world around us. Risk assessment. This is one of the biggest differences between engineers and politicians. Politicians ask, what sounds good? Does it look good? Does it sound good? Is my lapel pin on? Do I got my makeup? I'm coming at you with my grill, my mustache, my rings, my watch, and my little basement, because substance matters more than appearance. Usually, until you're in the public eye, and then appearance matters more than substance, which is the illusion or the perceived legitimacy that I was talking about earlier, which is why you have to tackle these things on a case-by-case basis, because they will try to get you with the glitter and fluff. They'll put that out there. Oh, cartels are so bad, they're killing all of us, blah, 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 blah. Never minding the fact that they're killing all of us here, right here in the stores with the shit that they're feeding us. Excuse me, I shouldn't have cussed. But if you walk into a 7-Eleven and try to find something that does not have sugar or salt or sodium in it, forget it. You can't do it. Everything in the store is full of saturated fats, things that are going to up your triglycerides, cause diabetes, heart disease, arterial plaque, and everything else in there. You can't find something healthy to save your life. You can't even go to Taco Bell without getting parasites and stuff like that that are going to cause explosive, you know what I'm talking about, all the stuff that's been in the news. And these are the experts that are in charge of everything. You know, it's just there's a federal government agency running every aspect of everything that we do in our life. And these are their best results, okay? A politician asks what sounds good. Engineers ask, what happens if we're wrong? What are the consequences? Risk has two parts, likelihood and consequence. Something can be unlikely, but catastrophic. That's why airplanes have redundant systems. Society should think that way too. So you build safety into everything that you do in aerospace and defense. But we don't do that with society, which is odd. And the proof of that is the fact that people die and are murdered day after day after day, to a point to where people start to ignore it because it just becomes routine, which is something I've already talked about in this thing. And I don't want to drag this thing out too long, but we need to get to the core of this. Airplanes and aerospace have redundant systems. Societies should think that way too. And in fact, they do in terms of their own well-being. There are underground bunkers that are designed to make sure that even in the event of a catastrophic event, that there is continuance of governance. They think this way for themselves, but not for you. Billionaires want bunkers, but not for you. So government, bunkers, continuance, good for them. Ivanka Trump and her little bunkers over in Albania, good for them. Peter Thiel and his down in New Zealand, good for him, and all the other people that are coming up with these things. But you and me and everybody else, screw you guys. We're going to leave you alone with an army of autonomous drones and robots that are going to go do everything that they wanted to do in Terminator or worse, is where we're at. Not being facetious, that's really where we're at. So, ask, what happens if we're wrong about AI? What happens if we're wrong about debt? What happens if we're wrong about war, civil liberties, food systems, cyber attack, energy? Don't dismiss low probability, high consequence risks simply because they're uncomfortable. The humane factors. I've already spoken about this. One of the biggest causes of accidents isn't equipment, it's the people, specifically groupthink. Saw it during COVID. Authority bias, thinking that Donald Trump and other people, that just because they managed to get themselves in office are actually someone that you should listen to. J.D. Vance, who's put in there by Peter Thiel. There's a thing that Bakunin wrote in God in the State where he's speaking about once a politician gets elected to office, they automatically think that they're better than you because they've been able to achieve something that you have not been able to do. And then people, looking at these people, start to think that they're better than they are too, but they're not. In fact, George Bush Jr., C student, It is important to realize that the experts are not experts, because if they were experts, we wouldn't be in $1 trillion debt and people would not be homeless in the street everywhere, dying of fentanyl everywhere, with the economy in the tank, but proof of which is how much it costs you to fill up your tank and how much it costs you to fill up a grocery cart full of groceries to bring home to your family. This is all brought to you by the experts that you never consented to be governed by, I might add. Ever. Not formally in writing. Authority bias, confirmation bias, schedule pressure, fear of speaking up. You know, if you think that I like being the only guy with cartel experience as a government operative against that in the YouTube thing out here, and I'm the only one that's ostracized because I ask all these questions, you're crazy. I do not like being in this position. I would like to be friendly with Julian Dory, Mark Gagnon, Tommy G, Katarina Schultz, Vince Vargas, Jeremy Carey, and everybody out there, Sean Ryan. But I have to say what's on my mind, and I'm not crazy. Tommy G asked Julian Dory if I'm schizophrenic. I'm not. I'm coming at this, and this is the methodology right here. Nothing schizophrenic about it. In fact, hey, Tommy G, the planes that you take every day to go every place, I've built the landing gear and other components on several of them. So I'm not schizophrenic while I'm building that. And they're good enough for you to fly from here to Cozumel, Mexico, or wherever you're going. But when I ask you for proof of your cartel stuff, all of a sudden Dave's schizophrenic and it's got Julian Dory call me up asking me what the hell I told you. Well, because I have a methodology that I'm going through asking for evidence so we can arrive to a better educated conclusion, which is what you purport to bring to your audience every time you're going to the hood, dog. Fear of speaking up. So I do speak up and I'm ostracized, and it's okay. I'm not here to be popular. I'm here to be honest and imperfect, because I am. But this is what I do for a living, so I'm here doing this with you. Hopefully it's entertaining, or at least a little bit, shed a little bit of light. That's true in aviation, it's true in business, it's true in politics, it's true in media. If everyone agrees, engineers become suspicious. Not because consensus is bad, because unanimous certainty can hide blind spots. You have to constantly question and challenge things. And it's not an attack on the person. And this is not an attack against Tommy G. It's not an attack against Katarina Schultz. And people do go goo-goo eyes for Katarina Schultz, and with good reason. She's pretty. It's not an attack on any of that. It's an attack on substantiate and corroborate what you're saying in a way that is meaningful, corroborated with external sources to where we can be like, yes, this is believable, and have a high degree of confidence in what you're saying, that's being portrayed as the truth, which is something that people are going to then base policy, military policy and otherwise, economic policy and otherwise, that have real world consequences, which is why I challenge everything that's out here in YouTube. And when I do find something and corroborate something, I do my best to make sure that I'm correct and upfront about it, because you have to have integrity. And integrity is more than the amount of money that you have in your bank account, and more than how good you are or how attractive people find you. Integrity means doing the right thing even when other people are not looking. So, I'm just going to close with this. People ask why I think differently, because I wasn't trained to defend narratives, man, especially my own. When I was younger, I was often mistaken in many facets of my life, which often happens in fatherless households, in households where children have access to drugs and otherwise. And as an adult male, or as an adult anybody, I am responsible for the consequences and everything that goes on in my life, whether it is something that is provoked externally or internally. I am responsible for mitigating any external consequences or actions my way, because I'm responsible for everything that goes on in my environment and my sphere of influence, okay? And that's the same for all of us. This is very much the lens from which I view the world. I was trained to prevent catastrophic failures at work. I still do. In fact, I'm working on stuff right now that has consequences for the entire country. And I need to make sure that every day when I go to work, I do my job correctly, because if not, there are people that don't even know me that could suffer as a result. And I take that responsibility seriously, just as other people do. I'm not alone. In fact, mostly we're not alone. We are lorded over by people that are driven by power or greed. And this is not something that we should allow when the broad bulk of people are good people, but they may be scared. And the way to get rid of fear, the way to get rid of ignorance, is to educate people. And the way to educate people is by tracing things down to brass tacks, like we're doing here. I was trained to prevent catastrophic failures. Failure analysis doesn't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. It doesn't care what television channel you watch. It only asks, where's the evidence? What's the failure mode? What's the root cause, right? What's the risk if we're wrong? And that's why I don't automatically trust the loudest voice in the challenge stories. I have gone out of my way to try to include everybody, Gafe 423, all these people, just in this little genre of YouTube thing that I've been doing now for the last couple years, my own channel, and have been on these major podcasts: Hector Bravo, Glenn Beck, Julian Dory, Johnny Mitchell, Tommy G, or not Tommy G, he doesn't want to talk to me, even though we've talked via email. Camp Gagnon, just there's been a whole bunch of them, dude, and potentially Matthew Cox here in the near future. But when I'm challenging people like Pierre Rossini and other people, this is why. When I'm asking Vincent Vargas, how did you validate that Pierre Rossini is who he says he is in terms of the cartel, when he's never been to Mexico other than a New Year's Eve party on one night? Now all of a sudden he's working for the cartel. These people are being presented to you, including Ed Calderon, as cartel experts, and Ed Calderon's talking on Julian Dory about Zacatecas. It's never worked in Zacatecas. I haven't. I'm nowhere brought up in the conversation at all. And not that I might know everything, even as the things that are going on in Zacatecas and Jalisco, but if we all got together and had an open conversation about Mexico and American journalism on YouTube regarding Mexico, it could be enlightening for everybody involved. Stefano, Katerina, Vince, Jeremy Carey, Bruno Vallela, Jesse Carey, Jeremy's brother. All of these people I've spoken to, and they don't want to do this. So, what's the risk if we're wrong? I've already talked about that. Drone warfare over Mexico isn't something I want. I don't want a war with Mexico. A lot of American citizens don't want a war with Mexico, being that they've got family in both countries going back generations. Kind of important, man. That's why I don't automatically trust the loudest voice in the challenge stories as far as the people that are established that got big budgets. That's why I question their assumptions. I don't automatically trust any of that. I want substantiated evidence. At the end of the day, airplanes don't stay in the air because people believe hard enough, right? You got to make sure everyone's done their job and trace it all down. That which gets validated or gets checked gets done. It's a maxim that we have at work. You have to be very meticulous in all things. They stay in the air because reality wins. If you have an absence of pressure above the wing, it's going to create lift. That's what causes that. So, reality always wins. I think I would like some help with my podcast, I don't think that there's really something in terms of creative writing like they have at Ironclad or behind Andy Stumpf and some of the stuff that Sean Ryan's doing with Jeremy Carey over there and Vincent Vargas. I don't want to act for you and come up with a creative, entertaining story for you. I want things questioned and challenged, and that at the end of the day, we're giving something that is tangible, that's real, that we can prove and substantiate where, when, what, why, how, whom, and what does it mean. We should constantly be asking each one of those questions, guys. Enough out of me. I'm going to spend some time with my wife. This has been kind of a long video, but it's what I've got for the day. And just briefly touching on my database over here, I have compiled a lot of claims, and I have compiled a lot of things that have not been substantiated, and maybe it would be interesting to start going through some of the video clips. The guys, my detractors, are going to love this. Some of the video clips of things that they've said on one date, and then go through a long enough timeline and find out that it was never substantiated, or things that they said on other dates, just to start building up kind of a dossier or a report of some of your favorite media personalities in terms of how much they really know, even though they make these sensationalist claims, and then at the same time, years later, in some cases, are found to have never actually been correct. And that's it, you know. And then just juxtapose that with them saying it on several different occasions and be like, oh, you're not an expert, or whatever. Not that that really gets us anywhere either. You know, you have to think about the output. Where does that really get us? At a minimum, it does get us to stop trusting voices that are just sitting there trying to make a buck through sensationalism, which is doing us all a favor. Realizing that it is just something that they drum up to make money. And we've made a lot of advancements in that. In fact, at least Johnny's starting to state that they do need to do due diligence on the claims that a lot of his guests are making. Thank God, man. For small favors. Hopefully Ironclad and them will follow suit with Ed and everybody else. Whatever. I'm going to leave that one alone. That's enough out of me for right now. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. I hope you and your families are at home, enjoying each other's company, and that you guys get every single thing that you want in life as long as it's righteous and just and doesn't harm others. Cheers, guys. Have a great day.